Hello.
Oh, hi
hey,
guys.
Race right by.
Oh, I'm just gonna, well, I'm first gonna take a picture and then I'll
yeah,
head on my way.
We sent our husbands up there.
Oh,
So find some old guys.
Here.
those are your husbands. Okay.
Just point them back this way.
Okay, I will. Absolutely.
We opted for the shade.
Hey there everyone, welcome back to a new video. My name is Harmon. Today's video takes place in Santa Barbara, California. I'm actually up above the city in the mountains. I'm on a trail called Lizard's Mouth Trail, and on this trail is where 15-year-old Nicholas Markowitz ended up being brutally murdered by several people on August 9th, 2000. And supposedly there's like a little memorial for him up here. And so that is what we're gonna try to find. All right guys, so this whole event started when a drug dealer named Jesse James Hollywood, I believe that's his real name. That's what his name in the article is anyway. So Jesse James Hollywood, he was owed money by Nicholas's brother Ben. $1,200 for some drugs, and Jesse James Hollywood and his drug dealing friends saw Nicholas walking down the road, and since they hadn't received their money yet, they decided to basically kidnap Nicholas and extort him for a bunch of money to try to recoup the $1,200 that they were owed from Nicholas's brother Ben. Since they weren't able to get the money, they just decided to kill Ben up here in the mountains, again off of Lizard Mouth Trail. I wish I brought my other camera just for this one instance, because my other camera you can zoom in really far. This is my 360 camera, which does good in like walking circumstances, but it doesn't zoom in, so you probably can't tell, but Santa Barbara is down below there in the water. But this is the Lizard's Mouth. So somewhere nearby, again, is where Nicholas's body was found. Again, he was killed near here as well, somewhere on this trail. And again, where that designated marker or memorial is where he basically ended up being killed. But I wanted to show you, of course, the Lizard's Mouth, the actual thing first. If you didn't know where it was, you would have easily walked right by it, as it's really low to the ground. Thankfully, a nice group of people saw me looking around, and I asked them, they're like, oh yeah, it's right here. So I found it. Now, of course, I'm going to head to the cemetery where he's buried. So I'm going to head out of here and I'll head to the cemetery, and of course fill you guys in with more details. All right guys, I'm at the Eden Memorial Park Cemetery here in Mission Hills, California. This is where Nick Markowitz is buried. This is about, I want to say, like an hour and a half south of where he was killed at. The night he was abducted, once again, several drug dealers who stated that Nick's brother or half-brother Ben owed them at least $1,200, but some police state that they believe that number was a lot higher. They believe that Nick's brother Ben owed these drug dealers upwards of about $36,000, and so that is why they drove by Nick and Ben's house on that night. And I guess reportedly they were just going to maybe like vandalize the house, you know, trying to just cause some havoc. However, instead of just causing havoc by breaking windows, they saw Nick walking down the road, and so they decided at that point they were just going to kidnap him or abduct him. Jesse James Hollywood, another guy named Jesse Rugg, and another guy named Ryan Hoyt pulled over, grabbed Nick, and threw him in the back of the van. They initially took him to a house where they tied him up, and where Jesse James Hollywood He took everything out of Nick's pockets, including his pager, some marijuana, and some Valium that he had. And for several days, they basically took Nick to different houses. And on several occasions, they actually ended up having some parties where all the different people there were 21 years and younger. All of them were hanging out, drinking, doing drugs together. And they even let him do his own thing. They let him go swimming in the pool with some friends in the backyard. A girl who was there knew that Nick had been kind of held hostage, as the previous night several of them walked into the bedroom and saw him tied up to the bed. And so this girl asked him, like, hey, you know, you're basically being held here captive. Like, why are you still staying here? Why don't you try to leave? And Nick's answer was, he just thought that I know self-defense, I can take care of myself. And one of the perpetrators told me that they're gonna let me go. And I guess since he was being able to, you know, hang out, party in the backyard, I guess he just assumed that, you know, everything would be fine and he would just be let go eventually. He had numerous chances to be able to escape, but unfortunately he never took those opportunities. The next morning, Ryan Hoyt, along with several other perpetrators, grabbed Nick. They again drove him up to the mountains, and that is when they shot and killed him up there. You guys might be wondering, how come no one at these parties that these perpetrators were holding Nick captive, how come no one called the police? How come no one said anything? And from what I've read, it sounds like the main ringleader guy, Jesse James Hollywood, it sounds like he was a pretty menacing guy who would threaten anyone who was basically in his way. And I guess many people who knew that Nick was kind of being held there against his will said, hey, like, Jesse, you need to, like, let this guy go. And Jesse told them, like, if you say anything, I will kill you. During that whole couple days where they're holding Nick, Jesse James, he called like a legal defense lawyer, and he asked him like how much trouble he would be in if he turned himself in for kidnapping. And I guess the lawyer said, hey, you're gonna be in prison for probably this amount of years. And so basically Jesse was like, screw that, let's just kill him, because if I'm going to prison for a long time, might as well go all the way. So Ryan Hoyt, the gunman who ended up actually shooting and killing Nick to death, he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death in 2001. Ryan Hoyt was 20. Next, 20-year-old Jesse Rugg was found guilty of aiding in the kidnap and murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with parole after 7 years. He served 11 years in prison and was released in 2013. 20-year-old William Skidmore was convicted of kidnapping and robbery, and he ended up serving 9 years and was released in 2009. Graham Presley, he was 17 years old at the time. He was convicted of digging Nick's grave and also murder. All it says is that he was released sometime after he turned 25. The main ringleader, Jesse James, once again, he was able to escape or evade capture for at least 5 years, had escaped to Brazil, but was finally caught. He was sentenced to life in prison for the murder and kidnapping. After all is said and done, a young 15-year-old lost his life over his brother's poor choices in everything, basically, and poor choices in friends, poor choices in dealing drugs. I feel like some of them got really lenient sentences. Some, again, most of them are actually already released from prison. I guess, I don't know, it just seems like sometimes our justice system is never always just. All I can say is I wish that sometimes some of these people would be put in prison for a lot longer than they are. But anyway, if you're new around here, again, my name's Harmon. Thank you for tuning in to my videos, and if you haven't already, hit subscribe. It's always free. And again, until next time, thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one.